Do you feel like we're down on the Warriors? Are we too harsh on the Warriors?
I just, there's such a fine line as I've tried to think through it, and we got into it in the last segment a little bit, between, all right, they are where they are at 7-8, 15 games into the season, but at the same time, if they had won the Minnesota game and the OKC game, they'd be 9-6, and I think you'd think everything's kind of fine given the circumstances. But they didn't win those games, and they're going to have to probably figure out ways to win those games, even if they're a little shorthanded at different points in the season. I think that's been, last night they picked up their second win without Draymond Green, so they're 2-4 without Draymond Green. Like sure, if you don't have Steph Curry, it's going to be tough to get a win. There's no denying that. But defensively, you don't have Draymond Green, and all of a sudden you can't stop any dribble penetration. Everything's a sieve. Your rotations are all screwy. And it's like, you know what? He's going to miss games too, whether it's due to injury or other issues between now and the end of the year. And for the Warriors' sake and for the Warriors fans' sake, I just hope we're not getting on that hamster wheel again of they're saying everything's fine and going to get to where it needs to be, but you look at the actual record and it's an uphill climb for November and December and January, February, all the way till the end of the year like it was a year ago. Because the losses they sustained over that stretch were the reason why they weren't in a good enough position to win come playoff time.
Yeah, essentially. I mean, you beat Sacramento and you had a chance against the Lakers. You had a real chance to beat a team that, wasn't that much, quote unquote, better than you.
Had home court advantage in the second round.
Right. And you didn't get it done. And, for a number of reasons, and we could look at a short bench, or you could look at the Jordan Poole factor and the team not being cohesive, or whatever word you want to use. But you had a spot where you could have made it to the Western Conference Finals very easily. And do you beat Denver? I don't think so. I mean, I think Denver was better than you last year, and I think they're still better than you in terms of, what you have roster-wise. But it's a spot where you look 15 games in, and it's a little bit disappointing, especially after the great road start. Last year, you were so bad on the road, and this year you came out, and you've done amazingly well on the road, yet you come home and you lose these games in different fashion, and now you got one more game without Draymond Green, and you hope to get him back sooner rather than later, and you will have him back for the Sacramento game, and you think about, what that means in terms of your overall cohesiveness, and you feel like maybe then you can go on a little bit of a run. But you mentioned it I think it was on Twitter or on X, where every game you go below 500, you need 2 games to get back above.
That's it.
Please explain.
Yeah, well, every game you dip, you get to 2 under, then that means you got to win 2. You got to be +2 at some point over a stretch. You win 2 just to get back.
Win 3 or 4,
back to even. So if you get 3 under, then it's 3. You're gonna. Every game you get under, you got to be that good at some point. So if let's say you're 3 under, well, that means you got to be. You either got to go 3-0, 4-1, 7-4, 10-7.
To get above,
to get back to even at that point. If you're so whatever it is, and it becomes, and it basically the math on it becomes, unless you're just going to get on a streak where you win 7, 8, 10 in a row,
right?
Which I think the Warriors are hopeful that they can get on some kind of a run like that, and they were able to get on a couple of runs like that 2 years ago, to where you just make up ground very quickly. Unless you're going to be a team that's capable of that, and I don't know what the Warriors' capability is going to be of streaks that are pushing double digits.
Right.
They did have the 5-game streak to begin. I think they were 5-1, right? Yeah, they were 0-1, and then they won 5 in a row, and they were 5-1. Right. So I do, but you got to prevent yourself from getting too far under 500, because you're going to spend, and they did this last year. They spent weeks just trying to get back to 500, and then everybody would exhale when they got back to 500. Well, back to 500 is 10 seed in the back West, to 500 is play-in tournament status.
But 5 games above, you might be the 5 seed.
You might be,
and that's where
and that's the difference, and that's where I think it's got to hurt a little, the fact that the Warriors had gotten off to the 6-2 start and haven't just been able to at least maintain that to the point where, if they were 10-5 right now or 9-6 right now, you feel pretty good about where things are.
No doubt. And you look at those games, the home and home, or actually I call it the stay and play, where you had the stay and play with Minnesota, the stay and play against OKC, those traditionally are going to be splits. When you've got the same team twice, you lose one, you win one, you win one, you lose one.
The Warriors wish they could have done that.
Right, but I looked at those games and I thought a split would be likely, and then you beat Houston, you're 3-2 at home, and at that point I think you would have been, looking at being 9-6 or even better than that as you head out to Phoenix, and you'd be in a little bit of a different spot.
Yeah, it's a fine line, but if this team was 9-6, you'd feel pretty good, all things considered. But they're not.
Right.
And so now you got to, you're 3 over. At that point, like, what do you got to do now to be 3 over, right? You got to
win 4 straight.
Yeah, you got to, or go 5-1 or go 8-4. And, the best the Warriors had done to this point was 5-1 and 6-2. Like, their best stretch was that, all right, 8 games, it went 6-2. Well, that right now would get you just, a couple games over at that point. And then, when is the next injury going to come? Or when is the next losing season going to come? You're always kind of fighting that unless you can separate yourself on the positive end.
Especially with an older team. You're kind of fighting that injury threat all the way. 888-957-9570 is the phone number. We're streaming live on YouTube. Head to youtube.com/957 the game. Watch us live. If anyone swears, you get to hear it. Like and subscribe for all 957 the game content on YouTube.
Oh.
Yeah, that would be me. You heard that on YouTube. You didn't hear it over the air because Grandy dumped it. But he kept it because, I swore, JD. The first time I swore in about 25 years in the business.
Wait, on the air?
Yeah, Grandy. More.
I just heard it, but when was that?
It was about 4 or 5 months ago.
Okay.
And it was the most stupid thing ever because Mark Willard's back on Monday, he was talking about going through a list of something, and he said, we're just going to go through it alphabetically.
This is actually going to be in alphabetical order.
Oh, I mean, for no reason. I said OS. And,
right. It was just like you were having a conversation in the hallway.
Exactly.
Having a conversation in the bar.
And I let it fly. And, Grandy dumped it. Grandy captured it.
Just kind of fell asleep for a second.
I totally fell asleep. But if you're on YouTube, you heard it. And it's powered by First NorCal Credit Union. Are the Warriors back, or are you still in a wait-and-see mode? 888-957-9570. Let's go to Paulie in San Francisco. Paulie, what are you doing? You're on with JD and Dibs.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I'm driving down south to see my old mom for Thanksgiving, so I hope I don't get cut off. I want to talk about looking forward for the Warriors. I'm a longtime fan, and I root hard no matter what. I think that something reasonable we can expect, or not expect, but hope for and need is for Clay to be who he was last year during the regular season. Because he put some numbers up, and when Steph was hurt, he was much better than and last night he started to show flashes of that. Two, you mentioned since I called, we need Draymond on the floor, because otherwise we have to commit all our resources to defending and rebounding in the low post, which leaves the perimeter open. And I wanted to ask you, why rule out the possibility of getting a big at the deadline? I mean, just somebody who can balance this a bit. The league has gotten a lot bigger. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Paulie, and drive safe, and say hi to your mom for all of us. JD, I'll kick over that last part to you in terms of getting a big at the deadline. What team that is any good or has a big who's any good wants to part with that big?
Well, my first thought is, do you want him to trade for Jokic or Embiid?
Both.
Or maybe Sabonis. I know Sabonis has not played well against the Warriors.
We could be like Minnesota, JD, and play the 3 7-footers all at once.
Yeah, Towns. I mean,
I'll take him.
I think Minnesota might be looking to get.
I'm thinking Steph with Towns, Jokic, Embiid, and give me Boban too.
Yeah, it's just so I
like
think
a freakishly big guy too.
And everybody else.
Can I get Wembanyama?
Isn't gonna play. Oh, Wembanyama.
Oh, give me Holmgren too. Not Mike. I love Mike.
No,
give me Chet.
Yeah, Mike wouldn't have hit that shot.
No,
the other night.
Mike's not a stretch 5.
Mike is not a stretch 5.
I love Mike.
Good.
Yeah.
Holmgren's really good.
We can get into to foul or not to foul in a minute, but stay on point in terms of the trade deadline.
Yeah, there isn't anybody. I mean,
right.
It's there are no second, third string centers on other teams that are going to be plopped onto this Warriors roster and play significant minutes. To me, the only way the Warriors are trading for a center is if somebody gets hurt. Now, if Kevon Looney gets hurt and he's going to be down for a lengthy stretch, then all right, then you probably do have to go upgrade and get a big, and I think they'd probably start looking at Usman Garuba a little bit more.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
One of the 3 two-way
players.
players.
Talking about?
He'd be getting the first run before they go out and deal for somebody.
Right.
But they've just deemed that even players like Alex Lynn and JaVale McGee and even guys like that are just not worth it compared to what they have on the roster.
Right. 888-957-9570. Are the Warriors back? Are you all back in on the Golden State Warriors after just one game? From the Comcast Business text line, this one from the 254, Klay Thompson is back and balling like the legend he is. That's from about 19 minutes ago, JD. Is Klay Thompson back, and is he balling like the legend he is?
We'll find out in the next 8 to 10 games if he can continue to shoot it at the level that he did last night, or maybe even not quite as high as the level that he did last night from three. I thought it was interesting post-game. He came out hot, and then he took a couple bad ones. And Steve Kerr pointed out the bad ones, I thought, last night in the post-game press conference, which was something that I make a little mark of that.
Yeah.
The fact that it wasn't just all gravy, and just I really think when things start to go in a bad way for Klay, there is more of an emphasis on making sure that he knows he's got to take better shots more consistently.
Yeah, this from Steve Kerr last night talking about Klay Thompson.
I thought Klay was much more patient offensively. Took a couple of bad shots early where we had plenty of time on the shot clock, and everybody just keeps telling him, if you just move it, you're going to get it back with this team, and that's what happened. I thought he was a lot more patient. The quality of his shots was much better.
Yeah, 7 of 16, 5 of 11 from three. And a 20-point night. I believe his first 20-point game of the year, JD.
First 20-point game of the year, and what, the third or fourth 20-point game of the year for any Warrior not named Steph Curry.
Right.
And so they needed it. I know Wiggins was the first time that when Steph had played that any other player had led the team in scoring when Wiggins did against Oklahoma City, and the Warriors needed that. So good sign for Klay Thompson, but ultimately it's got to be consistent. And I think, and I said this earlier, to me, if he plays solidly at the level that he played going back to the first 8-9 games of the year, I think the Warriors can live with that, assuming that the bench is playing well and they're relatively whole, and Stephen Curry's playing at an extremely high level, in addition to. So it's not so much that Klay has to be spectacular.
Right.
He just can't kill you when he's not having the best night.
Exactly.
I think that's what's happened too much here in the last week.
Last night, 7 of 16. He had 20, and if you can get 18 from Saric off the bench, and Chris Paul with a double-double, Chris Paul with 15 and 12, and Chris Paul in the postgame talked about assisting Klay, and he was a little bit surprised at how many of his dimes went Klay's way.
Analytics is crazy now. I would have never known that. We just hooping, and I tell Klay all the time, I've played against him for a long time. Every time he shoots it, I think it's going in. You know what I mean? And he's a big part of our team and everything that we do. Sometimes we're going to need him to, cause 2-3 people to guard him and find the next guy. But every time I'm pushing the ball up the court, I'm looking for him.
Yeah, interesting that part at the end, JD, where he said, if 2 and 3 guys are coming at you, just find the next guy. I think that Chris Paul has kind of latched on to what all the Warriors are thinking in terms of, Klay Thompson. And you talked about the OKC game at the end where he forced a couple of late threes in regulation and in overtime. And it wasn't that those threes cost you the game, but that's the Klay that we're all trying to avoid seeing.
It is. And it's the Klay that the Warriors really can't have because, and not to go Mike Singletary, but can't win with him like that. Really,
can't do it.
Cannot do it under any circumstances with the way this Warriors team is built. And again, I just keep coming back to those first 8 or 9 games. That is an acceptable template for success. He does not he does not have to be spectacular. He just has to, on the bad games, not kill him the way that the bad games have killed him, even if the overall numbers are great. Because I know he's made the point a lot and did it on media day and, overblown my struggles last year. And sure, again, you look at the overall numbers, that's fine. but you can't have every bad game be an automatic loss because it's so bad that your team can't recover from it, and that's what it seemed like happened a lot last year.
Steve Kerr at 5 o'clock with JD and myself. It's Willard and Dibs here on 95.7 The Game. And Steve last week talked about Clay being a slow starter, and I pointed out to Steve that according to Basketball Reference, he's a 35% three-point shooter in October. He goes to 40% in November, and he gradually gets better. January and February are traditionally his best months, but after the new year, every season, Clay does tend to shoot the ball better. So maybe this is the sign, JD, that Clay is going to round into better form earlier this season. Brent in San Francisco. What's going on, Brent? You're on with Willard and Dibs. JD's in for Mark.
What's going on, gentlemen? I'm headed to a showing right now. I'm a real estate agent in the Bay Area, but I wanted to squeeze in this call really quick. So I think we need a few questions answered consistently before we know that we're back. Clearly, what do we know? We know Steph's going to Steph, and we know Chris Paul is a good fit. Great move by the Warriors. But until Draymond's back, and we can actually limit some of Chris Paul's minutes because we know his body's going to break down unless we do, unless we know Draymond's going to be able to keep a cool enough head to play more than a few games before he's kicked out again, and unless we can get some consistency, we got a couple of flash-in-the-pan games from Clay and Wiggins is great, but until they can each put up 20 points on a consistent basis, I don't know that we can really claim we're back. I mean, we beat the Rockets last night. I don't think anyone went to sleep thinking like, wow, what a show of brute force by the Warriors.
Yeah, thanks, Brent, and good luck with the showing. Real estate, not quite as hot as it once was, but a good house will always sell. I think when Draymond comes back and the Warriors are, quote, whole, you do get a better look at just how this team can possibly play, but I think that it's more than that, and I wonder about what Evan Giddings said, JD, to us during the crossover. Is there more upside in the Warriors' offense or in the Warriors' defense?
That's a tough one.
Because to me, there's more upside in the Warriors' offense. I think that the defense is going to cap out at a certain point. If you're going to play Chris Paul and Steph and Clay, who's not the defender that he once was,
I think that's right.
Unless you want to go to a fully defense first kind of a rotation with Wiggins and GP2, then your defense can be better. But if you're playing your best five at the end of a game, your offense has more upside than your defense.
I do think the Warriors have shown so far this season, Dibs, that they have the capability of being a pretty solid defensive team when they have everybody.
Right.
So I'm with you on that. I don't know that there's much better they can do off of what they were when they were at their best at different points. Maybe a little bit. You can always ramp it up in the playoffs because the officials are going to let you get away with more in the playoffs. So I think that can help. So I do think the defense, when you have Draymond and when you have GP2, is probably going to be fine. It seems like there's enough of a foundation there to be good. The offense is where I'm a little more concerned because I've been surprised at how well that the bench has dominated other benches statistically, and it hasn't always felt like that in some of these individual games. Right. But then you look up and then I'm like, damn, that was 55-20 or what, it's.
And the Stephless minutes we always talked about last year as, when Steph is out, they're sunk, but not so much this year. In fact, they've actually extended some leads and gotten back in some games.
Yeah, and it's been impressive, and it's been really by committee, I think, as far as the way that's, it's been, Kuminga gets his points at different times, even if it's not totally efficient because he gets to the free throw line. And Saric is pitching in some nights pretty well, and Chris Paul is doing his thing when they've been whole as far as setting other players up. So it really has been, that part has surprised me. So I think the offense needs to be better than it has to this point.
Yeah.
But a lot of that is just look up and down the road. It's Wiggins and it's Clay, right? It's
right.
I think you're getting acceptable levels of offense from everybody, including Kuminga. I think his total numbers could he be more efficient? Fine, but he's averaging 10, 12, 10, 11. Like you'll take
what more do you want from him? Exactly.
And so you go almost player by player, and you're like, yeah, that's enough, enough, but not with Wiggins and not with Clay, and that's where it's got to shift.
888-957-9570. Warriors, are you in or you're out? I got to get Philmo Mike in. Philmo, I hate to squeeze you in. You got about 60 seconds, but happy Thanksgiving, brother. What do you got for us?
Oh, happy Thanksgiving, man. We got some real ones on the radio right now. You feel me? Captain 7, Mark Willard. You feel me? We'll see you next Monday. But anyway, we've forgotten where we came from. You feel me? I heard y'all talking about, are you guys satisfied? 6-game losing streak. That sounds like the Warriors, the We Believe Warriors, the Gary St. Jean Warriors, Lordy's Warriors. What are we talking about? You feel me? Our success the last 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years is blinded us. It's blinded me. It's blinded the real fans. We are mediocre right now. We are average. We are not the same Warriors from 6, 7 years ago. We are not the same Warriors from 2, 3 years ago. We are not. These Warriors remind me of, I got like 25 seconds left, of the Warriors that would be in the game the whole game, right? However that may be, ahead, come back, whatever it is, and then within the last 5, 6 minutes, lose the game. Now, we're not going to do that every game like those Warriors did because we're slightly better. We got a slightly better pedigree, but we're going to do that from time to time. And for a championship caliber team, the way we say that we are, the caliber of the skill that we think that we are, a 6-game losing streak from a dynasty that's still trying to win a ship, we're mediocre, man. We're mediocre, man. And on some real stuff, we're getting blinded by our past success.
Thank you, Phil Mo. Love you, brother. Thank you for the call. Happy Thanksgiving. I do think there's a little bit of that.